Good morning. We're trying something a little different for our prelude this morning, so you are welcome to participate today. We're going to do a little sing-along prelude, and we're probably going to keep this song going for a couple more weeks after this. The idea is that hopefully you'll learn the song, become a little more familiar with it, and then it can kind of become a part of our congregational repertoire, so to speak. So some of you will know this already. The song is We Shall Be Known. So you're welcome to join in. You're welcome to harmonize if you feel so inclined. Yeah. Maybe I'll get a note first. All right. So here we go. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Thank you.
You sounded pretty good early on a Sunday morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome everyone to the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa, whether you are here in Worship Hall or watching from wherever you may be, know that you are welcome. I'm the Reverend this congregation's lead minister.
And I'm Lee, your worship associate for this morning. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is the responsibility of this congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all those who have the willingness to understand, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice.
It is great to be with all of you this morning as winter has returned to the Great White North. Let us continue by joining our voices in song once more. Please rise in body or in spirit as we sing together Wayaya, which is in your teal hymnal as 1020. The lyrics should also be on the screen above. Let us sing.
Lutheran fiasco. One second, I know. 1, 2, 3.
We'll work on that one too. We'll work on that one too. We light our chalice this morning to words adapted from those by Erica Hewitt. This chalice, as a symbol of this faith, arose as a sign of promise that the marginalized would never be forgotten or ignored. This morning, we hold in our hearts all those who have been told explicitly or implicitly, through derision or dehumanization, that they're anything less than whole, anything less than beloved. As we light this flame, may we make of our lives a beacon, a symbol of our promise to draw the circle wide, a sign that we will not rest until all means all. Is there a helper, someone who would help me light a chalice this morning? If not, that's okay, but we've got two. Reverend Eric could use a little help. Got it?
Press it. Press it. The other way. Okay, here, put it in.
Can you help me with this? It goes right there. You may need to get a little higher. You got it. Thank you. Everything can be done with just a little cooperation. Our chalices are lit. Come, let us worship together. Now, this morning we are trying out a new chalice song, one we will be singing for a little while, a few Sundays at least. Jen will play it the first time through, and then we'll come along. Jen, would you lead us? Thank you. And now Jody has a rather novel time for all of us. Jody?
Good morning, class. Welcome to Art History 101. I am Professor McIntosh. Today we are going to discover the art of changing your perspective. We will be using the art of Jérôme Gonfalon to learn how easy it can be to see something very different by just changing how we look at it. Let's begin. Next slide, please. With our first picture, you can clearly see an animal. If you would like to share what animal you see, please raise your hand. Any of the children? Pat, what do you see? A goat. Does someone see something else? Yes, Phil. What is he talking about? Anyone else? Well, I see a deer or a goat. Yes, absolutely. So, yes, that's right. It is a goat or a deer, depending on your perspective, right? Now next picture may be a little tougher, but again, you are looking for an animal. Next slide, please. That Phil, my goodness. All right, what do we see here? Reverend Eric.
Upside down here.
All right, can someone else tell me what they see? Maury. A seal, thank you. And yes, sometimes it takes a second or two to identify the animal, or maybe not. And sometimes you can't see it until you're told what it is, and that is okay too. So now you are asking yourself, how is this a lesson of perspective? What if I told you that this is the exact same picture that you just identified as a deer? Next slide, please. As you can see, there they are. So this is the same picture, just turned upside down. We changed the perspective of how you are seeing it, and voila, you saw something totally different. Wonderful, let's continue. Next slide, please. Great. Can someone other than Phil please identify this animal for me? Do one of the children see it? I hear it from the children. Yes, that is an elephant. Thank you. All right. Next slide, please. Again, sometimes it's a little tricky at first to identify the animal, so I'll give you a second. Can someone please identify this one for me? Donna. A swan, that's right. Now I think you've caught on. Let's just see if you are right. Next slide, please. So that's right, you're on to me. The elephant and the swan are the same picture, just turned upside down again. Great. Next slide, please. All right, this is our final set of animals. Now have a good look at this one. You have now been exercising your ability to change perspective, and you know that this picture is actually two animals. See if you can see both animals at the same time. Can you recognize the new animal without changing the orientation of the picture? Can someone please tell me, what's the first one? Galaxy, what's the first animal you see? Well, what's the more obvious animal? A giraffe, that's right. And as Galaxy pointed out, some of you can see another animal. Next slide, please. It's a penguin, and you proved my point, so thank you. After exercising your ability to see two different perspectives, it gets easier. So what does this all mean? Sometimes we only see or understand something based on our own experiences and knowledge of the world. That would be fine if we lived on this planet all alone. but we don't. We share this world with many people with many different perspectives, and we need to be able to see things from other people's point of view. This is something that takes some practice, as you saw today, but it does get easier. And sometimes it is just harder to see a situation in a new way, and that is okay, but you still need to try. If you are having a hard time seeing something from a new perspective, then ask questions, listen, and see if that helps you change what you see or understand. Thank you for practicing the art of changing your perspective with me. Class dismissed.
And now we turn to how we are together. As health challenges continue, do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch. If you are new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. And if you're right here in Worship Hall with us this morning and would like more information about FirstU, it is available at the welcome table at the back of the pews. And now here's Guy from our board to highlight some announcements from today.
Good morning, all. After a successful fall fair, which I know many of you were at, our next fundraising activity will be a limited online auction this coming spring. I know it's hard to believe that spring will be here, but it will be. Now is the time to downsize and to receive a tax receipt. You can donate your high-end items, art objects or objets d'art, signed by known artists, or objects with appraisals. Donors will receive tax receipts for items which sell. Please email auction@firstunitarianottawa.ca for more information, and intake will end in early February. This coming Friday, January the 19th, our youth group will be meeting at 6:30 p.m. to play an escape room board game and make pizza together. All youth between 11 and 17 are welcome to join. On Wednesday, January the 31st at 6:30 p.m., please join FirstU's Women's Spirituality Group to celebrate Imbolc and Candlemas, the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Cis women, trans women, and non-binary folks are welcome and encouraged to attend. And be sure to join us here on Sunday, February the 4th, right after fellowship hour, for an in-person brainstorming session about our new social justice priority, cultivating compassionate community. Important and alliterative. You can learn more about these and other FirstU events and activities in the EUU, which is our weekly email newsletter that we encourage you to sign up for if you're not already receiving. You can also check our Facebook and Instagram pages and our website for notices and updates. Our calendar continues to be as full as ever, even though some of our activities will still take place online. This morning, each of us is welcome. We, of any heritage or faith, whatever our burdens, of any culture or race, of any gender or orientation, in any body, all that we are. Today, we are all part of this spiritual community.
Thank you, Guy. And before we move on to joys and sorrows, just want to make sure everyone knows that next week we will have a special guest with us on Sunday morning. Liz James of the renowned UU Hysterical Society will be our speaker. And if you think it's just going to be fun and laughs, you don't know Liz all that well. She is a deep soul with an amazing heart. I recommend next week to all of you. And now, as we do each week, in our time together, let us both recognize the joys and sorrows in our lives and across the globe. We honor these celebrations and challenges by placing stones in a bowl of water. As the ripple extends outward, we can imagine them continuing out beyond the small bowl, out through the pews, out into the larger community of all. This morning we begin with a stone of appreciation and gratitude for the brave and heartfelt life of one of Canada's greatest politicians, Ed Broadbent. His wife's Lucille's memorial service was held here in this space back in 2006. Please come forward now with any joy or celebration, any stone you would like to drop, anything you would like to share. That final stone I dropped was for all that remains yet to be shared in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. I invite us all now into a time of stillness and reflection. After several moments, Jen will bring us back together through the gift of music. Thank you, Jen. We have 2 readings for you this morning. The first is from Barbara Road. One hears so much about the calamities of growing old that at 60 I began to make a list of the things I liked about my advancing years. My younger friends suggested that I was merely playing Pollyanna. My older friends gently pointed out that my list might grow shorter as my life grew longer. Still, I made my list. At the head of my list was the remarkable discovery I was beginning to find the foibles of my friends and relatives endearing. I could understand how, after observing the real tragedy of life for 2/3 of a century, one could become more tolerant of minor irritations. In a world filled with the suffering of the hungry and the homeless and the victims of violence, the cap left off the toothpaste tube does not loom very large. But my fondness for these foibles came as a surprise to me. I suppose that I finally have come to understand that when one loves the whole person. And a person is defined by foibles as well as strengths. Of course, there is still a flash of irritation, but these days when we say, "Isn't that just like him?" more often than not, we say it with affection, with the same pleasure of recognition as when the letter in the mailbox is addressed in familiar handwriting. Perhaps every long marriage follows these 5 steps. 1, darling, you're perfect. 2, good grief, you seem to have a few foibles. 3, let me help you get rid of the foibles you have so you will indeed be perfect. 4, okay, I love you in spite of your foibles. And finally, 5, I can't believe this has happened. I sometimes love you because of your foibles. Rhodes continues. I recently made a wonderful discovery that foible originally meant the weak part of a sword, referring to the center to the tip of the sword, the top half, if you will. And that forte referred to the sword's bottom half, stronger half. That says something to me about accepting our weaknesses while holding on to our strengths. Who would want to go meet a dragon with only half a sword? Lee?
This morning's second reading is from Clark Wells. Several years ago, and shortly after twilight, our 3.5-year-old tried to gain his parents' attention to a single star. The parents were busy with time and schedules, the irritabilities of the day, and other worldly preoccupations. Yes, we see the star. Now I'm busy. Don't bother me. On hearing this, the young one launched through the porch door, fixed us with a fiery gaze, and said, "You be glad at that star." I will not forget the incident or his perfect words. It was one of those rare moments when you get everything you need for the good of your soul: reprimand, disclosure, and blessing. It was especially good for me, that surprising moment, because I am one who responds automatically and negatively to the usual exhortations to pause and be more appreciative of life. Fortunately, I was caught grandly off guard. There is a notion, with some truth in it, that we cannot command joy, happiness, appreciation, or fulfillment. We do not engineer the seasons of the soul or enjoin the quality of mood in another. And yet I do believe there is right and wisdom in the imperative declaration, "You be glad at that star." If we cannot compel ourselves into a stellar gladness, we can at least clean the dust from the lens of our perception. If we cannot dictate our own fulfillment, we can at least steer in the right direction. We cannot exact a guarantee for a more appreciative awareness of our world, for persons and stars, and breathing and tastes, and the incalculable gift of every day. We can at least prescribe some of the conditions through which an increased awareness is more likely to open up the skies for us and our children. It is not always the great evils that obstruct and waylay our joy. It is our unnecessary and undignified surrender to the petty enemies. And I suggest it is our duty to scheme against them and make them subservient to human degree, time and schedules, our irritabilities of the day, and other worldly preoccupations. Matters more subtle and humane should command our lives. You be glad at that star.
Thank you, Jen. To begin, I want to apologize to all of you. I should have been with you 2 weeks ago when I was last scheduled to be before you. I messed up. I enjoyed too many holiday sweets over the previous weeks, and that caught up with this type 2 diabetic in a way that it hadn't before. I was up and in what I will both euphemistically and accurately call distress most of the night and morning before 2 weeks ago Sunday morning. I was in no shape to be public. I didn't respect my limits. Humbled, I've been pretty darn good with my diet since then and getting my walks in despite the cold, and for the last week and a half my blood sugar numbers have been just about better than they've been in the last 5 years. Maybe I'll even start losing some of the weight that isn't doing me any good. So thank you to Mary, Brent, and everyone for pivoting so eloquently 2 weeks ago in my absence. I'm also grateful for Lee's exquisite talk last week. Lee, your model of approaching gratitude as a practice is profound, and I'm glad you shared with us your glimmer experience at the new Unitarian congregation in London. Thank you. Now, onward. This morning I want to talk about the role perspective plays in our understanding of things, especially beginnings and endings. When Jody showed me the images she prepared for us this morning earlier in the week, I reacted like my 5-year-old self would have, with consternation at first. I'm not as quick as Phil. And then, when understanding dawned, with immediate delight. 2 weeks ago, as it was the last day of 2023, I wanted to talk with you about beginning and endings. That morning, as Mary mentioned then, I had planned to tell you a story, one I didn't want someone else to share, so I kept it to myself. And I'm going to share it with you in just a little bit. While I was preparing that talk for 2 weeks ago on beginning and endings, all the while something my grandmother once said was perched on my shoulder, demanding my attention. Does that ever happen to you? It's not an earwig song, but it's something someone says that just echoes in your thinking for days. If I've mentioned Margaret Seidel Meter to you before, it would have been in reference to her championing her local municipality to host peer support groups for family members who had lost loved ones due to suicide after my Uncle Dave took his life at the age of 26. Margaret married my grandfather Clarence 10 years after his first wife died, giving birth to my father. She was my gram. He was my gramp. To everyone else, she was Margaret. Never Marge, never Peggy, as fine as those names are for other people. She was Margaret. Thank you very much. At 16, and the oldest of 10 children in the family, her father suddenly died. Hers was a proper German Catholic family. They lived in Menominee, Michigan, at the very southern tip of that state's Upper Peninsula, for those who know that portion of U.S. geography, on the shore of Lake Michigan. The years after her father's death were lean ones. The local butcher would save oxtails for the family and would quietly deliver them when he could. Some Christmases, Santa only brought a fresh navel orange for everyone, but Santa always brought a fresh navel orange for everyone on Christmas morning, a tradition I keep to this day. Margaret went on to study nursing in Chicago, and she always seemed to be the supportive wife to her husband Clarence, who was first a high school science teacher and football coach, and who later went on to become the director of the regional office of the U.S. National Labor Relations Board in Minneapolis. But when Gramp died, it soon became apparent to everyone in the family that Gram, Margaret, could hold her own and may have actually been the proverbial power behind the throne. When Gramp was alive, he did all their driving. While Gram kept her license current, she hadn't driven in years when he died. So in her late 70s, she learned to drive all over again. I was living not that far away from her at that point, finishing university. And one day, Graham loaned me a house key, and I held onto it so that I could help out when the need arose. Well, months later, she wondered why she was short a key. When I told her I still had it, she immediately asked for it back, saying, "I didn't mean for you to hold onto it, Eric." And she said that she would let me know if she needed any further help. Thank you very much. And when she tired of my proverbial 20-something question, "What's new, Graham?" she let me know quite clearly that that question might not be the best one for someone in her early 80s. And in doing so, she was asking me if I was mature enough to begin imagining things from her perspective. As it turns out, at that point, in the late 80s, she was losing friends almost as frequently as my gay friends were to AIDS. And then came my father's death. He was her stepson and the second of her 3 children she had to bury. The following summer, she and I flew together from Minneapolis to the plains of Nebraska, where we joined others in our family. And under the wide plains sky, we interred some of my father's ashes next to his birth mother's grave. The flight back from Nebraska to Minneapolis was uneventful, but the taxi driver gave us quite a ride from the airport back to her house, where I had left my car. We were both holding on to the seats with white knuckles as we made the usual half-hour trip in what could only have been 12 minutes. Still a bit wide-eyed and catching our breath, we said goodbye at her kitchen table late that afternoon. It turns out I was the last one to talk with her. She died of a heart attack that night. I could make light and say that the wild ride on top of normal grieving will do that to you, but I think Graham had reached her limit. I will always remember her on her last birthday. She was 83, and in that summer, she was wearing shorts in her patio and eating ice cream, varicose veins be damned. Graham taught me much about respect and limits, about honesty and courage, and about what is possible when we're determined. She also taught me the importance of trying, as best we can, to see things from someone else's point of view. The importance of practicing the skill, the art of changing our perspective every now and then. Now we're going to travel a little ways from Michigan, Nebraska, and Minneapolis, a little bit north and quite a ways west. Question: how many of you to have been to the University of British Columbia's Museum of Anthropology in Vancouver? I've said it again, this is a very educated crowd. For those of you who have been there, and I know some of you have, we talked earlier, do you recall the museum's signature piece, Bill Reed's Raven and the First Men? Oh yeah. And why that is its title, First Men, I'm going to call it Raven and the First People going forward. I hope that that's okay. Now, I first visited the museum in the summer of '99 and then again in 2014. The museum is my favorite museum in the world, and it's currently closed while seismic upgrades are under construction. Some weeks ago, during a conversation with one of you in my office, I went to my bookshelf looking for something and found instead a picture I had taken back at the museum back in '99. And I asked the person I was talking to, a church member, if they knew anything about the place, about the museum. It always looked to me like the museum was built on a military installation. Now, the church member I was talking to that day didn't know offhand, but they suggested that I reach out to Sean, the minister there, who had been the minister in Toronto until recently. Why hadn't I thought of that? Sean had been the speaker of the Sunday service and took part in our installation a year and a half ago, if you remember. He found, Google is an amazing thing, a newspaper article from 2018 about just what I was asking him about. And we'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to say a few words about the artwork. Do we have the slide? I hope it shows. Oh, it really doesn't. Okay. Next slide. Maybe that'll show a little better. Oh, there should be one in between. Maybe it didn't get in. All right, that's the military installation. We're going to get to that later. Back to the other one, even though it's not good. Okay. I apologize for that. I should have checked it with here. You have Raven, and he's on top of a huge clam. And in the clam, what you can't see is their little faces and little legs and little tushes. They're little people. The piece is inspired by a Haida creation myth in which Raven, always alert to what is new and shiny, notices a clamshell on the beach that's larger than the rest. Upon inspection, Raven finds that the clamshell is full of little squiggly creatures. These are the first people, and safe in their shell, they're afraid to come out into the big wide world. But in them, Raven sees endless possibilities for entertainment. He coaxes, he cajoles, he pleads, he promises, and slowly the first people take the bait. Take the risk and emerge. Once out of the shell, of course, there is no going back. Now, whenever now I feel afraid of taking that next risk, whether it's little or big, I think back to Raven and those first people. Life inside the clam was safe, but that's about all it could have been. Following the logic of the myth, I don't think those creatures inside the clam actually became people until they risked stepping out onto the sand. And I'm sure that their perspective changed dramatically once they were free of the shell, but perhaps not in the way they might have first envisioned, first feared. Yes, the world was still so large enough to be overwhelming, but their perspective also would have changed when they viewed themselves in relation to the expanse of the beach, the expanse of the world. They would have been able to realize that they weren't all that small in relation to everything else. The world was vast, yes, but they were of a size to make something of themselves in relation to the rest of it. Still, one era ended and another began, one that's a story still being written and hopefully will continue to be written for millennia to come if we're wise enough to see it through. And here I want to return to the article Sean found. Again, this was published in the Daily Hive by a Kenneth Chan in 2018. Turns out the museum sits on a cliff. Let's go to that other slide. Can we get it there? You can see the round pieces way on the top left and the bottom and in the middle. Those were installations of huge Mk7, I think anti-aircraft, but maybe anti-boat guns. Anyhow, they were from defense of the coast during World War II. Swords into plowshares. Raven and the first people sits in the middle on what had been the largest of those gun mounts. Besides, what were the builders of the museum going to do with 15-meter thick reinforced concrete? We can go back to the Raven now. Having now closed 2013, listen to me, having now closed 2023 and emerging into 2024, we will make of this year, what we make of this year, is at least in part up to us. Let's do as Lee suggests and practice the art of gratitude in the weeks and months to come. Let's also practice the art of trying to change our perspectives, because our story, each of our stories, is still being lived out. Some of us have the future before us like an endless beach waiting for us. In that case, the question is, what do you want your story to be? Some of us may find that there is more behind us than in front, just like my grandmother, Margaret. For you, the question may be, what wisdom and understanding can you still mine from the story of your life thus far? And what of your legacy? What might you teach those who are younger about what is most important and how to have proper perspective on life? And for those of us in the middle, with much behind and still some beach unclaimed stretching out ahead, well, we have the chance to do both. Renew our stories thus far and see what we still may make of the time we have left for everyone There's never any harm and often much to be gained by practicing the art of changing our perspective every now and then. Thank you, and so may it be. Amen.
Invite the ushers to start passing the baskets at this time. Our congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We have been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and beyond this community. Whether you're here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among the pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And now please rise as you are willing and able as we join together in our closing hymn before the winter solstice. Sing out Praise for the Journey, number 295 in our gray hymnal.
Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that coffee hour will begin in Fellowship Hall immediately after the service. If you are new here or still feel new or just feel new this morning or welcome a deeper conversation today, please pick up a green mug looking something like this as you enter Fellowship Hall. Doing so will help others looking forward to good conversation find you. Also in Fellowship Hall, the Justice and Equality Action Group will have fair trade coffee and chocolate available for sale. And behind us on the welcome table is a basket, I think to the left as well. You're right.
In front of you.
Oh, Mary, come on up here.
Trying to steal my thunder, honest to Pete. Anyway, I told you last week about this Welcome to the Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa form, which you can fill in even if you're not new, if you're interested in having the EUU or the Spire and so on. So we have those at the welcome table in front of the office, and now we have them also at the green mug table that Eric told you so eloquently about. In addition, today I'm asking those people who did order, and they were made up, these bowler tags like I have right here. I won't show you because it's a privacy issue, but these are the tags that some people have ordered but you have neglected to pick up. Well, guess what? I probably have them. Now, some of them have a piece of paper attached, and that means that if you would like to, and you don't have to, but if you would like to, you could contribute $2 towards these bowler tags. It does cost us for them, but if you can't afford it or don't want to, that's fine. We'll give you the tag anyway. But you have to come and get it first from me or from the table, and then afterwards you hang it up on the slots, but that way we know you got it. So if you did not pick it up, please come and see me and come and pick it up. Thanks.
We extinguish our chalice this morning to these words by John C. Morgan. And thank you, Mary. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. This morning's chalice is extinguished, but the spark of our connections and faith remains. Jen, will you please bless us again by leading us in our closing song?
Rise in
As we prepare now to leave this space, may our hearts remain open and our minds remain clear. We are people of both reason and heart, of both memory and hope. May we also always remain people of love, providing a place in this world for our spirit, a place that can best be called home. And now, as we return to the challenge of helping the world come alive in love, let me say, go in peace, my friends. Go in peace.